Most wrestlers will train and work their entire careers without getting a chance to wrestle for WWE. Some wrestlers, however, will train and work their careers only to have one match for the world's largest sports entertainment organization. It's rare, but due to various unique sets of circumstances, some wrestlers who have perhaps made their names elsewhere or in other arenas entirely are one and done when it comes to plying their trade on Vince McMahon's canvas. It gives you hope though, doesn't it? There's still time for AJ Hazard, I know there is. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 wrestlers who only had one match in WWE. Join us. Number 10, Jushin Liger. It took Jushin Thunder Liger being over 30 years into his historic career before he finally got the call from WWE. The deal was made when his old pal Finn Balor and then William Regal got in touch with the New Japan Pro Wrestling office, with the two sides then working out a one-shot deal for the masked innovator to appear for NXT. Liger had worked absolutely everywhere in the 3 decades prior, including all over Japan, Mexico and Europe, and for American promotions like WCW, TNA, and Ring of Honor. The perfect way to kick off TakeOver Brooklyn, Liger's entrance brought the house down before he had a very entertaining match with Tyler Breeze, someone who was certainly on the rise in NXT at the time. Liger got the win with his patented Liger Bomb before heading back to the land of the rising sun. After retiring from active in-ring competition in January 2020, Liger was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame the following year. Number 9, Mikey Whipwreck. The February 24th, 1997 episode of Monday Night Raw saw ECW invade WWE, which both helped to promote the Hardcore outfit's upcoming barely legal pay-per-view, while also breathing a bit of life into a somewhat stale WWE product. As part of the mini invasion, ECW got the chance to showcase their talent via a series of short matches and segments. Many of those featured, such as Tommy Dreamer, Devon Dudley, Sabu, Little Guido, Stevie Richards, and Perry Saturn, would go on to sign with WWE in future years. One wrestler who wrestled on the broadcast, however, would not. Mikey Whipwreck, beloved underdog and unlikely one-time ECW champion, was on the show just to put over Taz strongly. Their brief bout was a basic squash, with Whipwreck not even getting a proper entrance before being picked apart by the human suplex machine. It was Mikey's only WWE match, though he did appear for WWE again, accompanying his old tag team partner Tajiri at ECW One Night Stand 2005, and was also on hand for Rob Van Dam's title celebrations at the 2006 event. Rumour has it that Whipwreck was invited back as a wrestler for the subsequent ECW relaunch, but that he turned it down due to numerous debilitating injuries. And that's a shame because he missed out on a big match with the Zombie. Number 8, Cain Velasquez. The road from MMA to pro wrestling is becoming an increasingly popular one for athletes to take, and WWE seems to be more willing than ever to give those with shoot fighting experience a chance in sports entertainment. And it's easy to see why WWE gave UFC legend Cain Velasquez a shot, especially after he impressed during his appearances for Mexico's AAA promotion. Signed in late 2019, Cardio Cain was put into a feud with WWE champion Brock Lesnar, a man he had beaten for real in the Octagon 9 years prior. Kicking off Crown Jewel, their short WWE title bout was the very definition of an attraction, booked on the same show that boxing sensation Tyson Fury met Braun Strowman. The match was over before it really got a chance to begin, with the Beast Incarnate retaining despite interference from Rey Mysterio. Velasquez would have one more match, tagging with Humberto Carrillo to beat the OC at a non-televised live event in Mexico a month later. He was released in April 2020 due to budget cuts owing to the COVID-19 pandemic. Number 7, Bruce and Keith Hart. While Bret and Owen Hart found worldwide success as WWE superstars, it shouldn't be forgotten that the rest of the Hart brothers were also either wrestlers or otherwise involved in the family business. A few of the lesser-known Harts also worked for Vince McMahon, with Ross Hart wrestling a handful of matches for WWE as Ross Lindsay in 1990. 4 years later, two of the oldest brothers, Keith and Bruce, would wrestle their one and only WWE match. Keith and Bruce, who both had distinguished careers in Canada for Father Stu's Stampede Wrestling, teamed up with their younger siblings Bret and Owen at the 1993 Survivor Series, taking on Shawn Michaels and his Knights. The bout was supposed to be a continuation of the feud between the Hitman and Jerry Lawler, but the King was in a spot of legal bother at the time and was replaced by HBK and his merry band of jobbers. The Harts won a long and not particularly good match, with Owen being the only member of their team eliminated. Number 6, Lou Thesz. Regarded as one of the greatest wrestlers of all time and my personal favourite, Lou Thesz was a 3-time NWA World Champion, holding the title for a combined total of 10 years, 3 months, and 9 days, more than anyone else in history. He was basically retired by the 1970s, working select matches here and there, but came out of retirement in the late 80s for a one-off match on a WWE card. The Shooter was booked in a Legends Battle Royal on a November 11th, 1987 house show in New Jersey. And the 71-year-old Thesz won the bout, of course he bloody did, outlasting the likes of Ray Stevens, Pedro Morales, Chief Jay Strongbow, and Bobo Brazil. Though it was a historic match in many ways, it was not a happy occasion for everyone. Macho Man Randy Savage, who wrestled Harley Race that night, was furious that his father, promoter and wrestler Angelo Poffo, wasn't included in the Legends Battle Royal and held a grudge against Vince McMahon over it. As well as Thesz, another famous shooter with one WWE match on their resume was Billy Robinson, who wrestled for the then WWF on an MSG card in November 1975, defeating Johnny Rodz. Number 5, Lena Yarder. Lena Yarder, Yena Lada, Lana Yida, Yodle hee-hoo. You can see I'm killing time here because seriously, there's not much to talk about. Besides, who doesn't like a good yodel? Oh, everyone? Well, very well then. Coming to WWE via the 2007 edition of the Diva Search, Lena Yarder worked as a backstage interviewer and valet in between competing in bikini contests while training behind the scenes for an in-ring career. Her big moment in the squared circle finally came on the November 3rd, 2008 episode of Raw. In her first ever match, Lena teamed with Beth Phoenix, Jillian Hall, Katie Lee, Layla, Maurice, Natalia, and Victoria to defeat Candice Michelle, Eve Torres, Brie Bella, Michelle McCool, Kelly, Mickie James, Tiffany, and Mae Young. The 16 Diva tag lasted a total of 93 seconds, and Yarder didn't even get to tag in. You think WWE didn't take their women's division seriously back then? A week later, WWE wished her the best of luck in her future endeavors, and outside of one match at an indie show in June of 2009, that was it for Lena Yarder in the wrestling business. Number 4, Art Barr. Art Barr's North American wrestling career was basically over after he was convicted in 1990 of first-degree sexual abuse. Hounded out of the Portland territory after having his wrestling license there revoked, Barr would go on to work for WCW for a while before leaving there for Mexico. He became a big name south of the border, but he was relatively unknown to US audiences when he showed up in WWE as the Juicer to take on Latin Fury, aka Conan, on January 8th, 1992. A dark, non-televised match that was ostensibly a tryout for the Lucha Stars, Latin Fury worked a short and unexceptional match that's available to watch as a hidden gem on the WWE Network. It's perhaps most notable for Barr wearing a Save Pee Wee Herman t-shirt, a reference to the character played by actor Paul Reubens, who had been arrested for indecent exposure months earlier. Goodness me. Barr was a talented but clearly troubled performer who had the charisma to be a star in WWE, but he only ever had one showing there. Number 3, Kharma. Before the women's revolution in WWE and the rise of the likes of Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch, and Charlotte Flair changing the standard of women's wrestling in the mainstream US, Awesome Kong had done much to change the perception, particularly in TNA, with her series of hard-hitting matches with Gail Kim. Signed by WWE in 2010, she was rechristened Kharma and debuted in May 2011, making an impact by attacking members of the women's roster, including Michelle McCool and Maurice. Then, just weeks into her run, Kharma announced that she was pregnant and immediately went on sabbatical. She sadly suffered a miscarriage in December 2011. Her return at the 2012 Royal Rumble was a welcome surprise, making her, at that point, only the 3rd female to enter the match after Chyna and Beth Phoenix before her. Her appearance was a memorable one as she scared Michael Cole into eliminating himself and eliminated Hunico before being dumped out by Dolph Ziggler. Regrettably, this would be Kharma's sole WWE outing, as she was released months later while training to resume her full-time in-ring career. Number 2, Buff Bagwell. Had things gone according to plan, Buff Bagwell would have been one of the faces of the relaunched WCW in the summer of 2001. Things, needless to say, did not go according to plan. In his one televised WWE match, he did work a house show the night before. On the July 2nd, 2001 episode of Raw, Bagwell and Booker T had a main event WCW title match that was so poorly received, WWE officials decided to scrap the relaunch plans and forge on ahead with the Invasion storyline instead. That alone may not have been the end for Buff, but he also got into a fight with Shane Hurricane Helms at a WWE mandated training session for WCW workers, turned up late to his one house show booking, and then had his mum basically call talent relations head Jim Ross to inform him that he was injured and wouldn't be able to make his other bookings. And that was the final nail in his coffin, and WWE opted to release him rather than add him to the Alliance ranks. Number 1, Fuego del Sol. One of the sweetest wrestling stories of this year was Fuego del Sol's quest to win an AEW contract, something that was eventually given to him by Sammy Guevara after his spirited match with Miro on the debut episode of Rampage. Sammy, incidentally, is another member of the one-match-only WWE club, having competed in a dark match loss against Los Matadores at a TV taping back in April 2015. His best friend Fuego has also wrestled a solitary bout for WWE, though not under his more well-known masked persona. Working without the hood as KJ Orso, he took on Eric Rowan on the January 6th, 2020 episode of Raw. It went about how everyone expected, i.e. he was completely destroyed within 30 seconds, before the former Wyatt family man tried to introduce him to that thing he carried around in that cage, which resulted in KJ getting sprayed with bright red liquid and fleeing the scene. Did he flee in fear of the giant animatronic spider, or hightail it out of the arena to escape terrible WWE creative? Who's to say? Who's to say?